All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my first live stream by myself. So here we go. Just as a disclaimer, this is my knowledge of the rules as I understand them. It is your responsibility to check the local rules and regulations before you go. All the information shared today I found on the Mendocino National Forest website. There is a link in the description to this post. I encourage you to surf that website and get to know it and familiarize yourself with it, because there's a lot of really good information on there. So with that said, the first topic that I thought we'd talk about that I've never heard covered on any of the survival shows or anywhere else I've seen is pooping in the woods, going to the bathroom. So let's cover that one. Now, I carry a spade shovel anywhere I go, whether it's a day trip, camping trip. It's just good to have for recovery purposes or digging a hole if you have to go to the bathroom. On longer trips, though, I carry what's called a post hole digger. It's what you're used to seeing when people with two handles push it in, pull it apart. You can dig a 8 or 9 inch round hole pretty darn quick with one of those, a lot deeper and a lot faster you can with a spade shovel. So, when it comes to looking for a spot to poop, I like to be far away from anybody. I'm what they'd call a nervous pooper. So with that said, I'll usually look for a larger tree. When I mean a larger tree, a nice big fir tree drops a lot of needles, will have a lot of organic material under it. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and do it right up against the tree. I'll do it a little ways away. But if you go somewhat close to the tree, you'll find that the soil is a lot easier to dig because of the organic material. You can dig deeper and faster than you can by just saying looking for dirt or behind a bush. A lot of times in the bushes and whatnot, you'll find a lot of gravel, big rocks that you have to get out of the way, and it just becomes cumbersome. So the other thing, it is, if you read this, you'll read this on the Mendocino National Forest website. It is your responsibility to manage human waste. There are many commercial products on the market that deal with human waste. The last time I went to Moab, we brought along, it was basically a bucket lid. And what you would do is have these little liners that would go in there. And there were two parts to this liner. There was an inner liner and an outer liner. Within the inner portion was something you could use that had would help break it down faster and help deal with aromas. So you would roll that one up, zip it tied or zip it shut, and then there was an outer portion. You'd squeeze all the air out and zip that shut, and then you throw it in with the rest of your trash. And that made it real quick and easy to dispose of everything. So there are many other options out there. There's chemical versions and whatnot. And if you're in an RV, well, this isn't really going to, it doesn't pertain to you. If you must bury it, according to the website, you must dig a hole at least 6 inches or more into the soil and stay at least 100 feet away from a river, a lake, stream, spring, or a trail. 6 inches, my opinion, it's a little low. Something with or shallow. Something with a very sensitive nose like a bear will smell that and likely to dig it back up. And it's better to just go deeper is better. Just dig it deeper. If you think it's not deep enough, keep digging. Never bury toilet paper or sanitary products. Animals will dig it up and scatter it around the area. Now, not only is this disgusting, unsightly, but it's also a health hazard to humans and wildlife alike. I know it's kind of disgusting, but animals will eat it because it contains proteins and whatnot that they're not going to find, and it's an easy meal for them. So, just disgusting. Just take care of it. Bury it if you have to. So, let's move on. Another topic that's a little less disgusting, if you will. Harvesting firewood. Burn it where you find it or buy it. So if you're on your way to go camping, try to buy it as close as you can to where you're going to go camping. If you're going to try and harvest your own firewood, try to harvest it close to camp. If the reason that's said is because the firewood can often harbor insects, disease, and fungus and mold like sudden oak death or Phytophthora armillaria. You don't want to transport those from area or region to another region. So you can minimize the risk of moving those around and damaging other trees and whatnot by collecting it where you're actually camping. Let's see here. So I am kind of reading off a script so that I make sure I cover a whole bunch here. Cut your wood in a clearing to prevent for safety and for to prevent fires. Now, when I say safety, that's because I am a fairly experienced chainsaw operator. I'm not a professional. I don't cut trees all day long, but I've got a lot of experience with chainsaws. If you're in a grassy area where the grass is, say, green, if you're cutting with your chainsaw, there is a likelihood, a semi-high likelihood, that you could catch a bunch of the grass up inside your chain. Now, if that chain gets in between the bar and or if the grass gets between the bar and the chain, you could throw your chain. And if you throw your chain at a higher, when the engine's running at a high speed, that could be all kinds of bad. You wouldn't want that to happen. The chain can fling back up, cut your fingers. It can or come underneath. It can come up above. Any number of things. Hopefully, it just tangles the chain up and stops everything at once anyway, and that's going to be your best bet. So. And then when it comes to fires, if it's dry out, you don't want the hot muffler up against, say, some moss or dried bark, or throwing a spark, God forbid, into the dry grass. So it's best to just drag the wood out into, say, a clearing of some kind, or a dirt road, if you will, and cut it there. It will minimize all of those risks, the fire and the safety. Also, when you're cutting, be sure that you don't run your chainsaw into the dirt. That's instant dull. If you happen to hit a rock or dirt on just a few of the teeth, it's going to slow your chainsaw down significantly. So when we're talking about chainsaws, that covers another topic of combustion engines. Another combustion engine would be, our example would be a generator. So when you're out in the forest, it's a good idea to bring a rake. One reason is to rake around your fire ring. Or just keep camp kind of nice and neat. If you want to take the wife or the girlfriend out and you want it all nice and pretty, rake the area around there. It makes things a little bit better. If you're like me, I like to wear either flip-flops or bare feet. You're less likely to get a twig up inside between your foot and your flip-flop. It makes things a little bit nicer. So it also, though, creating a nice area, say 20 feet or more away around where you're cutting with a chainsaw or running a generator is not only a good idea, but during fire restrictions is mandatory. And check your regulations, because if the fire restrictions are high enough, you can't run them regardless. You cannot have them. So check your restrictions before you go. The Mendocino National Forests, generally, when things are sensitive or high fire danger, in the top right-hand corner, it'll be very obvious the fire danger level, but it'll also say where the restrictions are, and it'll usually give you a link to where you can find out further information on specific areas. And again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, give them a call. Every time I've run into a prevention officer or ranger, or called into a district office, or gone into, say, the Covelo office, they've always been friendly. They've never looked at me as, that's a stupid question. I've never felt that way. There is no such thing as a stupid question to them, because they want to make sure that we're all prepared. They want to make sure that we're all compliant. They don't want any one of us to be that guy that burned the forest down and ruins it for everybody for many years to come. So don't hesitate to reach out to them. Let's see here. So where do we leave off? So again, when you're going to run a combustion engine, make sure it's clear, the area is cleared, and make sure you're allowed to have it. Now, something else that's combustion, smoking. That goes for, well, it's legal in California to smoke weed, but also cigarettes. During these restrictions, you can only smoke inside your vehicle, in a building or a structure, inside your RV trailer or your RV, or in a designated campground. If you look within the fire restrictions, there's a list of approved fire-safe campgrounds. I know it threw me for a loop when I first found out about this, but there are actually campgrounds you can have a fire in year-round. I was floored. These areas have been specifically cleared, checked, and okayed by different municipalities, whether it's CAL FIRE or the Forest Service, to make sure that the likelihood of starting a fire is as low as possible. So if you check the restrictions, you'll find that there are some campgrounds you can have a fire all year round. In those campgrounds, you can have a cigarette and walk around. Just be respectful that not everybody this day and age likes the smell of them. So be respectful of who's downwind. Also, in some of these campgrounds, you don't need a fire permit. That also threw me for a loop. When I generally do what's called dispersed camping, which we'll cover more in depth. I have a video coming up in the next week or so. Dispersed camping, you do need a fire permit. Now, the fire permit is, you don't need specifically just for a fire. That's going to be any sort of open flame. An open flame can be defined as, but not limited to, a gas fire pit, your gas stove, a lantern, or a candle. Any of those can be akin to a wood fire in a fire ring. During heavy fire restrictions, you can't have any sort of fire. I didn't know it. I got a warning last year for having a gas propane fire pit during the restrictions, and well, they could see the flame, and they came over and said you're not supposed to have that. That's fine. We turned it off, but from then on, we used our stove. With that said, with the stove, you want to be careful, especially if you have dogs or children running around. Use that same rake we were talking about before to rake the area around the fire, or your stove. Forgive me. Hypothetically speaking, the dog could see a child running and go running across, and the leash that they're on could knock the stove over. If you've got grease, well, all of a sudden you've got a fire. If the area is raked, your likelihood of starting a forest fire has been deminimized. I also carry a fire extinguisher. I'll keep one in the truck. I keep one in camp. Not everybody carries them, but they're good to have. It's kind of like a spare tire or a Band-Aid. You hope you never need it, but if you do, you want it to be there and readily available. So check your restrictions, check the website, and if you have any questions, just call them or stop by on your way there. For me, I love to go up towards Plesket Meadow area, and the Covelo office is along the way. So I'll stop in along the way and I'll ask them any of my questions. I can pick up any sort of restrictions that they have printed out for that year and pick up maps. They've got OHV maps. There's general use maps. I carry this one every time I go in the forest. This thing is awesome. All the roads are on there, all kinds of places to see, the campgrounds, they're all on there. I think it was like $12. It doesn't actually say on here, but well worth every penny. Let's leave it at that. So moving on for fire restrictions. Fireworks, not allowed any time of the year. That goes for all types of fireworks, whether it's the safe and sane or the ones that you can find down in Wyoming and Texas, the ones that go up and go boom. Those are fun and awesome and all, but they're not for the forest. You don't want to be that guy. With that said, it also goes for exploding targets like tannerite. I've heard many a time from stories of rangers that they'll be talking to somebody and they'll hear an exploding target go off, and they'll immediately leave the area and head towards the direction of where they heard the explosion. It's not only is it a no-no, but it's also a federal offense. Once you combine those couple of chemicals, you've manufactured an explosive device. That's not a simple fine. That could mean also jail time. Nobody wants that. That's not good in any way, shape, or form. So let's move on to something a little less disgusting and a little less troublesome. So survival gear. Something I used to have what's called a Garmin Rhino. Now I want to get another one. It's been many years since I've had one. Not only is it a two-way radio, you can send text messages. It also has a large capacity internal storage, but also allows for SD cards. So you can carry topo maps, road maps, and pre-download all these to take with you. So like, this information is great because it doesn't require batteries, but with something that's digital, you can search it. You can surf it a lot easier than with this map. Now, the main reason I used to carry it was because I loved OHV. I love to ride my dirt bike. I have a WRF 250 or WR 250F, sorry. Hypothetically speaking, I'm riding along on the trail. I'm, let's say, in between riders, and something happens, God forbid, and boom, I'm off the side of the trail, and the riders are behind me. They just keep going, and no one even notices. Now, if I'm unconscious, that's a huge problem. Nobody saw where I went off. What if it's there's no mud to leave tracks in, or you're in the dust and there's 1,000 other tracks from quads, ATVs, side-by-sides, other dirt bikes? No one's going to know where you are. With the Garmin Rhino, and I'm not sponsored by Garmin in any way, shape, or form. I just really like the product, so I thought I would bring it up. You can have another person with a Garmin Rhino can do what's called pull your position. So if you're within, they advertise as 20 miles. Now with that 20 miles, that means line of sight. So if you're within thick tree canopy, over a cliff edge, or a bunch of rocks or other material in between you and the other operator, that 20 miles gets reduced exponentially. But the nice part about this, they can find your position. So if you're not responding on the radio, hey, Dylan, where'd you go? Hey, Dylan, hello? Hello? They can pull your position. Okay, well, he's not responding, so something must be wrong, but we know where he is within 10 feet. Okay, you can head down there, head over there. Let's go check him out. Let's see what's going on. Now, if there's a problem, they can find you. Another rider can head off and go get call first responders and get some help coming towards you. The one instance, I never had that actually happen, but the one instance it was really nice to have, I hit scan on my radio. We were up on Whole Mountain, and we went for what we thought was going to be a short trip, so we didn't pack much. What ended up happening is we hit a section of road that was on a little bit of a slant heading uphill, and the truck lost traction in the ice and slid backwards, and one tire went over the edge. Just one tire. So we were okay, but we had no recovery gear. We didn't have a shovel. We didn't have a winch. There was no one else with us, no other vehicles to pull us out. Sure, we had a strap, but there was nothing there to pull us with. So we ended up having to hike back down to where we were camped, which was, I think, about 3 or 4 miles. Got home or back to camp at about 11 o'clock. The next morning, we hiked back up and waited and waited and waited. After a while, I thought, well, I'm just going to turn on my radio and hit scan. Excuse me. I hit scan and eventually found somebody talking down at the base. And from there, I was able to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm up on the mountain. I'm alone with my son and a couple other people, and we're stuck. We have no way to get out. We're all okay, but we need some help. What ended up happening is the guy drove all the way up the mountain and had a winch, and he pulled us out in a matter of moments. So we spent a long time waiting around. Whereas if I had just thought about it and spent a minute and just hit scan a little sooner, might have had help that evening or a lot sooner during the day. Point being, we got out because of having this two-way radio. Now, I have several other two-way radios. Here's one from Walmart. I got one from Cabela's, and I've even got these little cheap ones here. These little cheap ones have very little range. I think they're FRS only. So I think they're like half a watt. But point being, this little device, it can fit in your pocket. It can fit in your backpack, and it could save your life. These are really simple. These ones here also have NOAA weather stations. So if I'm out in the middle of nowhere, I can sort of get the weather report. Granted, it's within radio reach, and NOAA doesn't broadcast absolutely everywhere. And you might be in the Mendocino National Forest up near Anthony Peak where you got good signal and you're picking up Point Arena, but that's what, a couple hundred miles away. So it's nice to have. Again, it's like a Band-Aid or a spare tire. You hope you never need it, but if you need it, it's there and nice to have. So the other product that I'm actually considering a little bit more than the Rhino is what's called the InReach Explorer. With this, you can get a subscription. Forgive me, I should have checked into this a little bit more. With a subscription, it's like 25 cents. You can send a text and another 25 cents to receive a text. And all you need is a clear view of the sky. So you can use a satellite to send a text that, hey, I'm great, I'm doing fine. I just wanted to say hello. I love you and I miss you. I'm hurt and I'm injured. I need help. And from there, it'll send out your position. Now, there's also a trigger on there that 24 hours a day, you can hit this SOS button and it will connect you to from what they're saying, some sort of nurse or rescue monitoring center that can assess how bad off you are. Do you just need stitches and we'll send a park ranger via four-wheeled vehicle? Or do we just send everybody out, send out the helicopters, the National Guard and everybody because you are, bleeding, subdermal hematoma, all these bad things that could go wrong, God forbid. Having that little device, and it's not very big, the subscription is really inexpensive. If you get in trouble, that could end up saving your life. So let's move on here. So we were talking about roads and the dangers of them. So a couple of things I wanted to mention was the different types of roads. You're going to find M roads, which stand for mountain highway. So around here, we've got a whole lot of them. We've got M6, the M4, the M2, M10. They go all over the place, and they'll lead you to a lot of really cool places. You also have what are called FH roads, Forest Highway. My favorite one is Forest Highway 7. It starts out as Highway 162 from the 101 side, goes all the way across east to west, or west to east, across the Mendocino National Forest, over to the I-5. That's a fantastic road. I haven't done the whole trip, but I really, really want to. Now, these roads you'll find are a lot more forgiving to vehicles than, say, N roads. The N roads will be these offshoots that you'll find. I have a video up for Keller Lake. You take 20 off from Forest Highway 7. You'll take 22 and 11. Go down to Keller Lake. I believe that also takes you to Black Butte, but I'd have to verify that one. if you're taking a passenger vehicle or say a stock vehicle with not a lot of lift or aggressive tires, try and, if you're not an experienced driver, stick to the M roads or the FH roads. The M1 and the M6 heading up Whole Mountain are actually not that bad. I've seen passenger cars make it on them. As you get higher up on the M1 to the top of Whole Mountain, it starts to get a little bit more, let's say, a higher experience level. Granted, I have actually seen a police officer in a Crown Victoria right at the turn going to the very peak of Whole Mountain, which was unheard of. I had never seen that before in my life. So it comes back to, in my opinion, 60% driver, 40% vehicle. I've seen a BMW make it most of the way up Whole Mountain on the M1 because it came down to the driver. I've seen drivers driving really nice trucks and end up breaking a U-joint or over-flexing their vehicle and snapping a leaf spring or snapping a brake line. I actually had a friend do that. He was trying to show off and he over-flexed his vehicle, snapped off one of the hardened brake lines. Well, next thing you know, he's puking brake fluid all over, which is not only polluting the ground, but now he doesn't have brakes. So in that situation, we fortunately had some tools and some experience. We took off the brake line, heated it in the fire, pounded it down, folded it over, heated it up, pounded it down, folded it over, pounded it down. Did that repeatedly, and he got back with 3 brakes. Now, 3 is better than none. It's not perfect and not the ideal solution. So again, it comes back to 60% driver, 40% vehicle. Okay, so another question that I get asked really often is about dogs. Where are good dog-friendly areas? They're all dog-friendly, but you're going to find some are more restrictive than others. The most restrictive is going to be national parks and monuments. Some of those won't even allow dogs at all. A lot of the parks will allow them, but on a leash. But for the most part, they're not going to be as easy as, say, the National Forest or BLM land. On BLM or National Forest, you can have a dog, but it's got to be on leash. So what we like is the ones with, the retractable ones you see all over the place. You hold the button, the dog can't go anywhere, so you can keep it a short leash or let the dog run a little bit further away. The main thing is that you have the dog tethered in case, say, a deer goes running by. The dog doesn't bolt and chase the deer and scare it or hurt it or get into a fight. Or what if the deer turns around and it happens to be a buck with antlers? That could be bad. Or say a boar or a bear. They can fight. That's what they grow up. They're wild animals. You don't want any part of that. So when we're back in camp, though, I don't really want to be holding on to a leash the entire time. So there's a couple of solutions. One is put the leash on, like in my truck, I tow a trailer. So I'll hitch the handle portion to the ball of the hitch. The dog isn't going to jump up and pull that off. But a better solution that I found last time is take about 30 feet of rope and tether it from one tree to another and try to find no obstacles in between for a dog to knock over, spill, get into, or get tangled on. And I'll take one of these and I'll clip it up onto that rope that goes across from tree to tree. Now, this can slide back and forth and the dog can run back and forth, back and forth. From here, I'm going to run their general leash. So the dog has got a clip to their collar or a harness, which I like even more because they're less likely to pull out. And then I can just clip it on to the leash that goes around my hand and then clip it up onto the dog run that goes back and forth. Then when I go out and about, I can unclip this, stick it in the back of the truck because we have a rope that goes from the back driver's side to the front passenger side diagonally right along the bed of the truck. And then about that much rope tethered from the line that goes back and forth diagonally across my bed up onto the harness. The dog's not going anywhere. The dog can basically get its snout to the edge of the bed, but that's the extent of it. It can't even get a paw up on the edge of the bed. You don't want to be the one that the dog jumps over the side, not see it, and you're dragging your dog down the road, or the dog jumps out and is not tethered, and then you leave your dog behind. That would be all kinds of bad. Man's best friend, right? We don't want to leave him in the woods. So those are a couple of things. So the main things to consider when you're asking yourself, well, how long a leash can I have? I was unable to find on the website, and through the research I've done, a maximum length of dog leash. So with that said, though, the things to consider would be, is the dog going to be a hazard to others or an annoyance? Can it get into another person's camp and just cause ruckus? Or maybe they just don't want your dog in their camp. Can the dog get onto a road? You don't want the dog being able to cross the road or get into the road or messing with wildlife. If your rope is, say, 150 feet long from tree to tree, and then you have another 75 feet off of this, that's a lot of area the dog could cover, and you don't want the dog. Some dogs are sneaky, they like to hide, and you don't want it surprising some sort of animal and then being trampled or fought or just all kinds of bad. So ask yourself, is it going to cause a nuisance? Is it going to cross a road? Is it going to mess with the wildlife? Those are the main things to think about. So when we talk about wildlife, let's talk about predators, bears, mountain lions, so on and so forth. There's a few things to consider. The plausibility, for lack of any other word, I don't even know if that's actually a word, of that becoming an issue when you're out camping is pretty low. Generally speaking, in a lot of places, the animals are hunted, so they're pretty scared of people. Also, a lot of people target shoot. They don't want anything to do with any of that stuff. So unless you're, say, in the game preserve or reservation, or I'm not sure the other definition, they're going to stay away from you. So, but if you want to take precautions, some good ideas, rules of thumb to think about would be to talk when you're walking. If you're with somebody else, talk. If you're out in the woods by yourself, whistle. Have a good time. Make yourself known, so you don't walk around a corner or a bend or a tree or a rock and startle a bear or a mountain lion, because that would be bad, and that would cause a situation that could scare the animal and make them go into fight or flight, and you'd rather they went into flight, but they might go in and fight. So also try to avoid, don't run. Try and be big and loud and scary. Make that animal want nothing to do with you. If you're waving your hands and shouting and screaming or banging on the proverbial pot and pan, they're going to go away and they're going to want nothing to do with you. So those are good things to remember when you're out in the woods. And again, for the most part, they're more scared of us than they are of us. So anyway. Okay, so the another thing to remember is if you see a mother bear or a mountain lion or what have you with cubs, just go away. Get away. Again, don't run, but just turn around and walk the other direction. Show yourself as not a threat. Certainly don't crouch, because that's going to indicate some sort of threat to them. Just stand up tall, turn around, whistle while you walk, talk, and just walk away and get away from them. Okay, so moving on up. So a couple different types of camping. There's minimalist camping and then, let's say, maximalist camping. Minimalist being what can fit in my backpack. That's what I'm taking camping. On this channel here, I don't cover that very much because that's not really my style. Excuse me. I'll take day trips, and what fits in my backpack for the day trip, sure, it's a great time. Let's go. But you're not going to find me out in the woods with a backpack, with my sleeping bag, my tent, and all my gear and my food and everything in my back. That's not my style. I'm going to be the maximalist. I'm going to be the kind of guy that brings my full-size truck with a small, in my case, 6x10 box trailer that doubles as my tent. Within there, I'm going to have an inverter, a battery, an entire tote of dishes. I mean, literally, it's, I think, 2.5, 3 feet across by 1.5 feet by about 1.5 feet. Stuff full every dish you're going to want to ever have. I carry extension cords, but then I also have a tote that's going to have mosquito netting, first aid kit, glow sticks, just all kinds of other general camping stuff, some rope, some bungee cords, some duct tape, some baling wire, all of that stuff. So when I say maximalist, that's going to be kind of my style. When I go out in the wintertime, I'm going to bring a Mr. Buddy heater and a propane tank. I'm going to use the propane tank to heat my trailer and stay warm, which I do have a carbon monoxide detector inside and a smoke detector. But then during the day, I'm using it to run my propane stove. I have a dual burner where each burner is 60,000 BTUs. I can boil 5 gallons of water in, I think, about 5 minutes. I'd rather turn it down or elevate my cooking or whatever I'm cooking to slow it down than have to wait 4 hours for my water to boil. If I'm trying to purify water or make the camping shower. Now, camping showers, I have 2 different types. I carry a solar shower that I'll generally fill up during the day and leave out during the sun. In the evening, if the water's not warm enough, I bring an aluminum pot for canning. It carries about 6 or 7 gallons of water. After the day has gone by of heating in the sun, I'll pour it into that pot. And if it's not warm enough, I'll put that pot on top of my stove and warm it up some more. From there, last time I was out buying my solar shower, they had a whole display of showers. And of course, I'm the kind that if I see something I like, I'm going to buy it, especially if it's inexpensive, under $100. In this case, what I ended up finding was a battery or self-contained battery and pump system that charges via USB with a 3.5-foot hose and a shower wand. It's perfect. So I get my water to whatever temperature I want. I set it outside somewhere, and I run the shower head up on a tree, maybe use a bungee cord or a piece of tape or what have you to hold the shower head up in there, click it on, stick it in the water, and you get about an 8-minute shower. Far longer. I think it's double, almost triple what you get out of a solar shower. The problem with this, my biggest problem with a solar shower is turning them on and off when I'm all soaked up. For one, the capacity of water is kind of on the low side. So if I'm showering and I've got my face all soaked up, I don't want to be fumbling around for the release mechanism, or one of them you have to separate and pull apart. And I was out camping and I couldn't get it to come apart because we were out in the sand. The sand had gotten in between the two parts, and my face is all covered in soap. It was miserable. So I've actually found for the 10 more bucks to get the battery operated one is kind of nice. But again, I'll preheat the water with a solar shower, and then use the pump or use the pot to heat the water on the stove a little bit more, and then use the pump shower. But if you're a minimalist camper, then rolling up a solar shower is going to be a lot less weight and a lot less room inside your backpack. That's great. That's fine. I get it all. When it comes to creature comforts, I'm all about them. I have those totes I was talking about. Several of them are going to contain camping gear that I am going to unload in camp, and then the totes are empty. I have a piece of plywood I cut in half. I'm going to lay those totes out and both halves of the plywood out, and then I'm going to put down my foam pad. Yeah, it's a 4-inch foam pad. I believe it's a full size, not quite a queen. Extremely comfortable. I'm never buying an air mattress ever again. I lost count of how many air mattresses I bought, and they just get a little hole in them. And the hole is almost impossible to find, almost impossible to patch. So you're just flying through these things and creating a ton of waste. You notice when you throw them away, some of these ones are like 16 inches tall and the size of a queen size mattress. When that pops, it fills up most of your trash can. Now, how many times over does that happen to you? And let's think about everybody that goes camping. Think about all the waste. So finding a reusable foam pad, to me, is hands down the best way to go if you're a maximalist camper, not a minimalist. Ours will fold up as a trifold. So during the day, it actually doubles as, let's call it a futon. I can fold it up and use it as a couch during the day, and at night, fold it down flat, and it's extremely comfortable. I've never had the wife complain once yet. So we were just talking about gear. So another thing that I like, or another topic that was asked of me when it relates to gear, is sleeping bags. Should I buy an inexpensive one, a good one, or just bring all my blankets from home? Well, at this point, I've done all of them. When I first started out camping, my budget was extremely low, so I'd bring blankets from home. That's great because they have that smell and that feel you're used to, so I always sleep really well. Only problem with that is they're extremely bulky. And if you don't have a trailer to put them in, they get dusty and dirty on the drive out there because they don't have a stuff sack or a stuff bag or a duffel bag to put them in. So I always find myself using large contractor bags over and over again to keep them clean or dry. If you're driving out and it's raining or snowing, excuse me, they're going to get filthy. That's no part of good. So in hindsight with all of that, I do still have less expensive bags that I think are rated to about 40 degrees. It's a great summer bag. They're not very bulky. They're not very thick. That's great. But what if you only had the choice of one, whether it be a good, say, sub-zero sleeping bag, summertime bag, or all your clothing or all your bedding from home? In hindsight, if money wasn't an object, I would go and get a really cold bag. One that's, I think mine right now, my coldest is rated to -25. The reason I say that, you can always unzip it. You can always put a leg out. You can always put an arm out. You can always be less inside of it. I'd rather have a bag that in the middle of the night, if I'm really cold, I can zip it up and I know I'm going to be warm. Maybe zip it halfway, 2/3, or all the way if it's really, really cold. I'd rather have a bag that's overrated than underrated. There's nothing worse than a night in your tent just shivering cold. Those nights are so long and so miserable. And then the next day you're underslept and you just have no motivation to go out and do stuff. You're not in a good mood. So if I, again, in hindsight, if I had to do it all over again, I'd spend the save or layaway, credit card. What I've done in the past also is PayPal offers, I think it's called Pay Later. They give you 6 months with no interest to buy something. So if you spend $250 on a bag, what is that over the course of 6 months? So every month you make a payment at 0% interest. That's not that much money. So do that with your other items. Your camp stove. Again, Coleman makes some very small stoves. Some people that works great for them. I just gave away a little stove that folded up, and you unfolded it, but you basically use twigs to heat your stove, to heat your pot or your pan. That's great if that's your style. That's not my style. So again, if you feel you need to go bigger, try using these pay later options. Some of the other big box stores, they have the similar solution where you can pay over time. So just throw some stuff from some food for thought, if you will. So when it comes to let's say day trips or general good to have when you're out on camping, those might be two different topics, but let's combine the two. So if you're out on a hike, well, maybe we should separate the two. So if you're out on a hike, some good things to have would be something to start a fire with. Let's say a lighter, or if it's going to be raining, take a flint and steel, or magnesium and a flint. Also, there's what's called a piston fire. So I don't know if you've ever heard of char cloth. Maybe that's a video I should do at another point. Excuse me. If you take an Altoids tin and take some real cotton and cut the cotton into squares, you want thinner cotton. You don't want a cotton towel like cotton jeans or a cotton shirt, and make a whole bunch of layers and put them inside the Altoids container. Close the lid, stick it in the fire. As soon as you see the smoke cease, pull it back out, not with your hands, with some sort of other grabbing tool, whether it be two sticks or a pot holder or whatnot. Let it sit and cool. Once it's cold, open it up. You'll find that all the layers are like charcoal. Char cloth, not charcoal. You got char cloth. Extremely flammable, but not like gasoline flammable. If you get it near the fire, it's not going to erupt because of the vapors. Go ahead and you can separate out the different layers. If you have an ignition source, even if it's a flint, and get it to strike and get the sparks, that char cloth will take a spark very quickly. A lighter will get it going. If you take several pieces, several layers, peel them up, and problem is you can't really crumple it because it kind of falls apart into pieces. But if you're very careful, you can sort of ball it up, stick it underneath some tinder, and you can start a fire. Once that char cloth takes a spark, it won't go out. I took a piece once before and lit it with a friend of mine, and we were trying to experiment to see if we could blow it out. The harder we blew, the faster it burned. It's perfect. Only problem is if it gets wet, it's not going to burn. So that would be the only criteria. If you're going to be where it's going to, if you're out in the snow or it's going to be raining, I would bring some sort of magnesium and then a flint and steel. The magnesium is going to take a spark from the flint and the steel, and it's going to burn at around 2,000 degrees, even if it's moist out. Your hardest problem at that point is finding tinder that's going to burn, but you can always find no matter where you are, you can find dry tinder. You can also consider adding like a dried tree sap to that, and the sap will also act like a wax or bacon grease. It will take once you get it lit, it will tend to stay lit, and you can use that to light larger twigs, larger sticks, larger branches, and then some logs. So we've covered that one. So another thing that's really handy to have is a multi-tool, say a Leatherman. A pocket knife is great. I carry a camping knife. It's kind of, someone call it a survival knife. It's about 8 or 10 inches. It's got a blade on one side, and it's really thick on the back side for taking another stick and like using it to beat and break branches or break logs in half for splitting firewood, or if you need to, for breaking bones. If you're out stranded and you need to harvest an animal of some kind, a heavy knife is really good. But if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather have a Leatherman. Leatherman's going to have the pliers, it's going to have the knife, it'll have a can opener, and it's going to fit right in my pocket. Whereas my survival knife, I actually have to tether it to my belt and then around my thigh. It's not, I don't want to say that big, because it's not a machete, but it's rather large. So a multi-tool, in my opinion, if I had to choose between the two, would be the direction I went. These days you can find a paracord bracelet. even at Home Depot. They're all over the place. Dick's Sporting Goods, Sportsman's Warehouse, excuse me, it's water. They fit around your wrist really nicely, but unfolded, they turn out to be 20 or 30 feet of paracord. Paracord's nice because it can hold a whole lot of weight. You can use it to string up a tarp, use it to, you know, as a run around your neck if your arm is broken, all kinds of different means. But also if you open it up, you have multiple strands inside. With those multiple strands, you have even more rope. Granted, it's not as strong as all the strands combined, but you can make a longer rope out of it. You can make more gadgets with it, more tether. You could use it to wrap up some, take a branch, take some dead pine needles, wrap them around, and then wrap them with the paracord strings. And then what I've done in the past is melt some, harvest a whole bunch of tree sap, melt the tree sap down in some sort of container, and pour it all over the pine needles and light it. The tree sap will slow the ignition, the burning of the pine needles, and you got yourself a torch. It will also be a bigger flame that burns longer. So you can use the tree sap is handy in many, many ways. So a paracord bracelet is handy to have. Water is going to be handy, whether it's just a small water bottle for the day or a several gallon container when you're going out in the woods. I like to have at least 2 gallons per person per day. I know that's a little abundant. Granted, when I'm out there, so I just got a question. Does the world Trump strike fear in the world? Oh, come on now. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. So I like 2 gallons of water per person per day. Again, I'm driving a 3/4 ton diesel truck, so having an abundance of water is not an issue. The more weight in the truck, actually, the smoother it rides. A tin cup, if you're a minimalist, at least having that is going to be good for boiling water if you're stranded and need to purify water. Mixing your chili in to warm it up. Many uses. A means of communication. We just talked about those radios. Whether it be a simple radio like this that does GMRS and FRS, or a fancier version like the Garmin Rhino that will have, well, you need a license for that, but it can actually transmit up to 20 miles because I think it's 5 or 6 watts. You do need to get a hold of the FCC and get a license for that, but they do, mine at least back in the day, would allow you to turn the wattage down to say 2 or 3, which is legal for use without a license. So means of communication. One thing I've also heard is that if you're out in the middle of nowhere and your phone says it doesn't actually have signal, call 911 anyway. Some of the phones can actually switch over to the older analog systems and reach a cell tower that a digital system might not be able to. Or if somebody happens to be able to receive that signal while it's trying to broadcast, who knows? Just hit 911 and see what happens. Good quality boots. Don't go to Walmart and buy the cheapest ones you can. Buy good ones. They're going to last a lot longer. They're going to be a lot more comfortable. The break-in period is always kind of a bummer, but that is what it is. Go out and hike some more. Break them in. Keep them oiled. They'll break in even faster. Good quality boots, but also a high ankle. That will give you good ankle support when you're hiking, and you're less likely to roll your ankle and sprain your ankle, but also it's a good prevention for snake bites. It won't eliminate them, but the higher up the boot, the snake is going to have trouble penetrating the leather. So that's something to consider. A walking stick. Now, some will take ski poles, aluminum ski pole, all kinds of handy things. When you're walking through along a trail, you can use the pole now, or a stick or a branch or whatever you find to every once in a while kind of smack the bushes, the grass as you walk along to watch for snakes. If there's a rattlesnake in the bushes, hopefully it will scurry away and go away rather than bite you. That's one of the things. It's kind of like when I was talking about with the bears and the mountain lions. Make noise. Make yourself known. Make your presence known. A compass and a map. Now, all these different devices, I don't have any more. They're great and all, but they require one thing: batteries. What if you're out for a really long time and the batteries go dead? Or hypothetically, you asked your kid to check the batteries and they didn't check the batteries. So a map. This never runs out of batteries. Neither does a compass. Learn how to read the maps. These are not actually that hard. When you look through this map here, it's actually got a lot of detail to it and shows all the trails. So it's a good idea to have and consider because it's going to fit in your backpack and not carry a lot of, does not take up a lot of room or weight, and doesn't need batteries or charging. A signal mirror is good to have. They're using for during the day. If you're stranded, you can use it to signal aircraft or search and rescue if you get in trouble. And again, they're really small. Those will fit in your back pocket, no problem. With the signal mirror being said, flashlight's handy to have, but also a flashlight that's the new ones these days will have different strobe settings, whether it's really fast or really slow. A strobe at night can be imperative because if someone's looking for you, they're going to see a strobe light a lot sooner and a lot faster than, say, just a light that's on. You ever look out when you're at the top of a mountain and you see kind of a light on the road? Well, that could be somebody who's in trouble. But if you see a strobe light, your eye's going to be caught to that, and your curiosity is going to be piqued. If you don't have strobe, you can turn on your flashlight and wave your hand in front of it. Now, not everybody these days knows Morse code, but that might not be a bad thing to learn. Your SOS. You can use the pattern of dash and dots to form the SOS pattern, and search and rescue is going to be able to find you a lot faster. Another thing that's really handy to have, even though I go out with this box trailer, so I might as well be in an RV, a tarp. I usually carry a 10 by 10 or say a 20 by 20, and keep it in the package because it doesn't take up much room. But hypothetically, what if we get a storm coming? I don't want to be cooking inside my trailer. Or what if I run into somebody who is ill prepared? You might just save their trip. Hey, here's a tarp. It's not that much money, and you saved their trip. So tarps are good to have. Another question I've been asked quite a bit is, what's the difference between BLM land, national parks, national monuments, so on and so forth? So the definition I found online is that BLM and national parks and forests are run by two different subsidiaries, where the national forest is the Department of Interior, and then BLM is going to be run by the Department of Agriculture. Now, I could have those backwards, but they are two different departments. BLM, you're going to find a lot of times is desert, shrubland, tundra, areas that are less hospitable climates than, say, a national forest or a national park. BLM is great if you love to go out and ride dirt bikes, side-by-sides, shoot guns, and aren't there for the beauty as much as the activities. BLM is great, and you'll find it's very abundant, actually. There's a whole lot of BLM land out there. Generally speaking, it's yellow on the map. Now, national forests, they're going to be, how would you say this? Of broad use, OHV, target shooting, hiking, camping, all these things, dogs and pets we were just talking about, are all going to be welcome and allowed out there. Whereas a national park, there's going to be pretty much no hunting, pretty much no OHV. Now, I'm not saying there isn't in all of them, but a lot of them are going to have a lot more, restrictions. Some of them are going to require you to, when I went to Zion, we had to take a bus system to get in. That's fine if you want to go see those. There's some beautiful areas out there, but national parks and monuments are going to have a lot more restrictions. So that would be the biggest thing I could tell you, is that the depending on what you're looking for, it's national forests and BLM are going to be a lot more friendly to the dogs, OHV, and having a good time. The parks are going to be more like Yosemite and Yellowstone, where they're beautiful but very restrictive. Now, when it comes to, let's say, wilderness area, that's going to be less restrictive yet more restrictive. There's not going to be the main restrictions they're going to have is anything man-made, like motorcycles, cars, trucks. It basically has to fit a horseback or on your back. But when you get out in there, you're going to see the smallest amount of evidence of man out of all of the places. Wilderness is a beautiful area, but again, that's going to be for backpackers and minimalist camping. But you're going to have a great time out there. If you're the type of person like me who wants to get away, or you're more than me, wants to really get away, wilderness area would be something I would seek out. If you want to be able to take your motor vehicle in there without OHV, say your Jeep, your truck, what have you, consider checking out Game Refuge or our game preserves. They're great areas. The animals are going to be, when I was in there last year in the one off the M6, we actually saw a brown bear, the biggest one I'd ever seen. And when we drove by, he was, I think, 100 yards out. Didn't seem to care we were even there. He didn't run away. Versus the times I've seen the black bears up on the top of Whole Mountain, they want nothing to do with you, and they just go running as fast as they can. They get away. So if you want the wildlife, fewer people, check out the Game Refuge. And the the parks where where weapons are not allowed and OHV is not allowed. So with that said, this has been a great show. I've had a great time. I encourage anybody, if you have any questions or comments, reach out to me. I don't know everything, but I'd be more than happy to help you seek out the answers, find the answers. Again, in the link of this, or in the description, there is a link to the Mendocino National Forest website. I encourage you to check it out. Within there, if you can't find your answer, call them up. They're super friendly people. Please, if you found this at all interesting, I encourage you to hit like, add a comment. Feel free to reach out to me. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again soon next time.